Despite all the reservations by the government, Sue Gray, the civil servant who led the excoriating report into Partygate, will start work for the Labour government High Command in September. She'll start working for Sir Keir Starmer. The Advisory Committee on Business Appointments had suggested that she should start 6 months after quitting as a civil servant in March in order to preserve, quote, the civil service reputation for political neutrality. There's no evidence, the committee found, that she had done anything to favour Labour while she was a senior civil servant and while she was investigating Partygate. Government officials and people like Nadine Dorries, an icon herself of parliamentary propriety, smell a rat and argue that her taking up another job is a, quote, prima facie breach of a civil service code. Of course, when people use language like that, they're pretending to be lawyers, as Gray failed to declare her Labour affiliation. The problem really is that the government is piqued that a civil servant should express any sort of affiliation for a political party. But of course, civil servants are human beings, as Matt Hancock said. There are plans now for a senior minister to make a statement on Monday saying, in contradiction of ACOBA, this advisory committee, that Sue Gray had actually broken the rules. Meanwhile, unless there is a serious challenge, other than this statement, rather than posturing, griping, and rhetoric from Rishi, Miss Gray will begin working for Sir Keir Starmer and preparing for government ahead of the Conservative election rout at the end of next year or by January 2025. ACOBA said that there is limited scope for Sue Gray to give Labour unfair advantage, and that to date there has been no evidence of inappropriate decision-making by her or of her inability to remain impartial. But it acknowledged that a potential link existed. There was a potential risk, or if Sue Gray were to take up a role with Labour upon leaving the civil service, and hence its recommendation of a 6 months gardening leave, which of course is exactly what's happening. The timing and details of Labour's approach to Sue Gray were also detailed in the report, and although there was contact, it was only in October last year, after publication of the report, that Sir Keir approached Sue Gray directly about a potential job. He did this in a telephone call 5 months after the report into Partygate had been published and was in the public domain. After this, she had informal meetings, we understand, and discussions with his team thereafter, and she was then able to discuss their developing plans. No formal job offer was made until March the 2nd this year, or rather March the 1st when she accepted it, and March the 2nd when it was made public. It is conventional for ministers to follow ACOBA's advisory recommendations. The ministers in government have already expressed disappointment, and ACOBA has equally expressed disappointment about the negative briefing to the media by ministers as injurious and unfair to their confidential role. And of course, we know that ministers or ex-prime ministers like Boris and Nadine Dorries have barely paid lip service to the role of ACOBA. So this advisory committee is being treated with a certain amount of contempt by the current government. So what is new?